42nd birthday stream. I'm gonna just start. Now let's see. Is this up? Dee. Okay. Copy video URL. Okay. Just gonna test this. And that's going. Okay. Now, let me just see.
Interested in socialism and world politics these days.
All right. Well, I'm waiting to see if anyone shows. You make sure I get the window set up so I'll actually see if they do show up. Would be important. Get that moved over here so I can actually see chat, because I like to see chat. Chat is an integral part of the experience. It's very difficult for me to do this if I'm just fucking talking to myself. Okay, so guess we'll. Oh, let's see. Let's put on a little light music. And since chess.com is apparently down, apart from some of their chess bots, just gonna play a little bit of this. actually.
내 조국을 빛내가는 불타는 그 삶 우린 사랑해. 남들이 가보준 꽃송이 묻히여 누리는 향락을 바라지 않아라. 제 손으로 가꾼 열매 내 조국에 더해주는 불타는 그 삶을 우린 사랑해.
Actually, I probably just do anything the look of my screen that I sound so surprised by that, but it is a bit of a surprise.
흐르는 세월에 날과 달들이 빛나는 자욱을 남기며 살리라. 한순간을 산다 해도 내 조국이 기억하는 불타는 그 삶을
That's precisely what I was hoping you were going to do.
세계 두들봐 젊은 문제들 하얗게 빛나는 충실한 눈동자 죽어도 영생은 시작되는
Pandemic has been great for anyone who makes hand version. What the hell, 2020, right? Shit starts to cough. Anything else gonna happen? Or they still offer unrestricted stuff? Okay, let's try some of these. Let's try some of these. Not as good. Okay, that was some nice. Very awesome. Getting the queen now. I remember noticing these in the editorial scenes in the past, but the queen out very good. Oh shit. I did not see that. At least there's that. That's some solution. didn't just hear me. Here's what I'm going to play again. Why the fuck not, really? System is a tool, not a religion. Use the Windows now? Oh, okay, that might actually be only 6 minutes. Like, how many times can he repeat himself in 6 minutes? The last thing I watched, he reached himself for fucking... He repeated himself for about 40 minutes before finally getting to the out there on the phone. Defending Jimmy Dore for what? 좀 보자요. 백수변 동지에 의하면 이 동영상에서 모든 타입의 레즈모리가 있다고 하는데 오케이. Is it back up yet? Okay, you're fucking kidding me. That's... Oh, Jesus Christ. Colombia, now they're, in addition to all the death squads that weren't required to disarm during the so-called peace process, now the government sent fucking tanks out to attack the protesters. People are getting slaughtered there, and if you're following my Twitter, if not, it's never too late to start. I've just retweeted a thing that is a link to some of the people, some of the mutual aid requests coming from comrades down in Colombia for anyone who can afford to chip in a little bit. That would be definitely a worthy place to be, sending some money and badly needed. Of course.
Now, as far as Jay Sakai.
Never heard of Red Lettuce, but they'll platform fucking Caleb Maupin, so. I mean, that's kind of all I really need to know about them. No. Oh, I have to see this. Thought slime serves imperialism. A different kind of socialism. Yes, okay. I'm gonna have a quick break. Let me just make a note in chat on that. Quick break. Back in 5 or so. Nobody's here just now, but just in case somebody does show up. Yeah, that is actually working. Good. I'll put that on mute, and I will be right back. And then we're going to have another mop and dunk. It's my birthday, and I feel like taking the piss out of Caleb Maupin. And okay. Let's see. Here's if they're still doing this scheduled maintenance. Also, let me just make entirely certain. Yeah, okay, good. Oh, hey, okay. Scheduled maintenance is over. That's good, though right now we're gonna be, finding out about how Thought Slime serves imperialism. I'm very excited to find out what bullshit this is going to be. I wonder if he manages to actually summarize his point within 5 minutes of starting the fucking video.
I saw Joey here last night, alive as you and me.
Oh, wait a second.
Says I, but
See,
Joey,
okay, and that's so
you
fitting.
can
This is, like,
be
perfectly
dead.
ironic.
I
Because
never died, says he.
here we have
I
a Communist
never
Party member
died.
singing a ballad of
People are covered with mud. You can't tell if they're wearing clothes or what. What's your name?
Joe Hill, an
Jessica, did you mean to get this money?
member,
Threw me in.
in a video where a Nazgul is going
Jody
to be...
Brar of the Communist Party of... Material analysis is good for a lot of things.
The mud.
Yeah.
Leftist personality who calls my attention that a certain internet pseudo-leftist personality who calls himself Thought Slime has decided to target Jyoti Brar, a prominent communist leader, and myself.
A prominent communist leader. Okay. See, here's the thing. Most people outside of Britain don't know anything about the fairly tangled web of various sorts of left groups and sort of just a fucking authoritarian cult groups that exist there. And so somebody says, "Oh, they're they're a leader in the Communist Party of Great Britain." First of all, most people won't know there's not just one. And the one that Jyoti Brar was in, she's no longer in it, as far as I can tell from her Twitter feed. She's moved over to the so-called Patriotic Socialist Workers' Party, which is, literally, it's supposed to be blending nationalism and socialism. It's a very sort of novel idea. And you can tell that it's going to be feminist as fuck because leading misogynist twat George Galloway is one of the top people in it. Yeah, but the group she was in was the Communist Party of Britain Marxist-Leninist. That sounds impressive, maybe to somebody who doesn't know the inverse relationship between the length of the name of an organization and the size of the organization. But the CPGBML are tiny, and they are a laughingstock, and they're known for being generally fairly reactionary. They're known for basically being the sort of people that Caleb Maupin kind of likes to hang out with. So, prominent communist leader, look, I can tell you, as somebody who's spent quite a long time on the British left, I know I don't sound like it right now, but you should see me other times. When I'm over there, I sound completely different. My accent changes with my surroundings. I can tell you, at no time in any of my association with the British left had I even heard of Jyoti Brar until this dick nugget decided to do a video with her, and Thought Slime quite justly ripped the piss out of it.
The reason he's decided to go after us is because he disapproves of something that Jyoti Brar said in an interview I did with her 9 months ago.
And yes, she said some transphobic shit, and actually, I think a lot of people have already seen this. So, okay, and that's where... Vosh, who's not exactly lacking in transphobia himself, tries to see if Caleb Maupin will express the position that is the absolute minimum of decency, i.e. trans men are men, trans women are women, and non-binary people are real, and he assiduously avoids doing that.
Hate crimes very frequently by bigots who somehow feel threatened by their very existence. Transgender people have difficulty.
Yeah, bigots like like Jyoti Brar, for example, who you platformed. Okay, oh, this is his CV.
The police department here actually had a policy of profiling transgender women and stopping and frisking them, and in some cases often arresting them unjustly on charges of prostitution. And here you can see me with Mariela Castro, an individual who's been very key in reforming the way the Cuban government treats LGBT people.
Okay, we've got him having photo ops. Jesus, his haircut actually used to be worse. That's remarkable.
People should be beaten up and killed. It wasn't about whether they should face discrimination in hiring. It wasn't about whether their families should reject them. It wasn't about any of that.
Except that, yeah, he's saying that the transphobic shit that he sort of just nodded along, as Jyoti Bar said on his YouTube channel, was nothing to do with any of those things, which, the question, of course, with Caleb Maupin is always, does he really just not comprehend it, or is he hoping that the audience is ignorant enough or naive enough not to comprehend the relationship between saying trans people aren't valid, denying who they are, denying the validity of their genders, and the violence that is done on that exact fucking basis? And that is a mystery.
It was about transgender ideology. And honestly, I do not know enough about this topic. I am not well informed enough about the issue of transgender ideology.
Which means that this so-called transgender ideology, which actually doesn't fucking exist. His state of knowledge on that is roughly on his state of knowledge is on the thinking of Marx and Engels. The difference between him being that he prefers to be sort of low-key full of shit when it comes to trans people is, of course, all transgender ideology, this dog whistle term, is of course a term. It means just the right for the right of trans people to exist and be respected as who they are. That's it. But transgender ideology is something that fucking transphobes came up with in order to make it sound like trans people are trying to indoctrinate people by just asking for the most basic fucking human respect. And now, here's the thing. If Caleb Maupin has been around this issue as much as the photos that he's shown of him standing next to people who are in support, who seem to be taking decent positions, I don't recognize any of them, would suggest, then he knows perfectly well what a crock of shit this is. Okay? Because this isn't even a new dog whistle. This goes back, like, I think at least 10, maybe 15 years, the first time I heard somebody trying to make just the question of whether trans people are entitled to basic human rights and dignity as transgender ideology. But, yeah, I mean, this is...
to make a comment on it. So I let Jyoti Brar, a prominent British communist who I respect deeply, give her opinion. And this thought slime objects to her opinion.
Yes, because it was a bunch of transphobic bullshit, and you did absolutely nothing to challenge it, and he was right to object to that.
The thing is, I don't view the transgender issue as an abstract ideological question.
Okay, this is great, because the thing is, he's just dedicated several minutes now to turning the transgender issue, i.e. trans people and whether trans people are entitled to exist, basically, into an abstract ideological question that he feels he can't possibly comment on, but he is happy to let fucking bigots spread their excrement on his show.
I view it as an issue of human rights and an issue of affecting people's lives. And this is starting to point to the real difference between me and this thought slime individual and a lot of people that are out to malign and slander legitimate anti-imperialists, Marxists, and activists.
Jesus Christ, look at that fucking haircut. Like, okay. Either, I mean, if any of these people actually has an involvement with trans rights that goes beyond just happening to hold that fucking sign, the branded sign of the Workers' World Party, fucking useless group that is, then Caleb Maupin would certainly have been exposed to people who see through this bullshit about transgender ideology, and he would know perfectly well what the deal is. And that would suggest that he is just lying right now, which, well, that wouldn't be the first time. He does a fair bit of that. Okay.
Down U.S. imperialism. Now, I don't know whether what Jyoti Brar said about the ideology being promoted by many transgender activists today is correct or not.
No, another transphobic buzzword right there. Not just, see, because TERFs like Jyoti Brar, the most prominent communist leader nobody on the British left, no British communists ever fucking heard of, and who now works in a basically low-key fash party, or at least stands them very prominently on her Twitter bio. You never hear them talk about trans people. It's always trans activists. This is all part of this framing of trans people's existence as an ideology, which is the framing that he is accepting at the same time as he says he doesn't accept that. I mean, this is a level of hypocrisy that actually shows a greater sophistication that I would have credited him for. He's like more sophisticated on bullshitting on this than he is on bullshitting on Marxism. Which is interesting. His transphobia apologetic skills are definitely higher than his bullshitting on Marxism skills.
I simply don't have the knowledge. I've heard people from both sides of the issue talk, and they both say things that are very persuasive. I just don't know enough about it.
Both sides of the issue being whether trans people have the right to live and be respected, given basic human dignity, and their identities and their genders respected, and the people who say no, they shouldn't. And he's both sides seeing that. This is why I tend to think that he isn't actually ignorant, because this is sophisticated bullshit right here. This isn't like his thing where his whole thing about billionaires that we watched yesterday, where, you know, he goes, and all he does is repeat sort of irrelevancies for about the first 40 minutes, and then kind of loses the thread, but continues to get just very angry and scold us all from what looks like the vice principal's desk, the way they're shooting it, as opposed to this, which looks much more like he's shooting this on a long-haul flight in an airline toilet.
However, even if Jyoti Brar were to be dead wrong about this issue, even if everything she said was completely wrong, that would not take away from the fact that Brar is
heroic, amazing. Okay, let's
and this is at the root of one of the greatest.
What's this picture supposed to show me? That she stood by a sign about fire exits? How is this telling me that she's like fucking heroic or amazing? I mean, you still haven't actually shown us where she's fucking prominent outside of the tiny little splinter group from the CPGB splinter group that is a fucking laughingstock amongst British communists.
Crimes that this internet milieu, this cesspool of pseudo-leftists commit. Jyoti Brar and the Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninists have been on the forefront of struggling for the rights of working people in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, they've never been on the forefront of fucking anything. Like, nobody could even name I mean, I know one person who I think I would actually bet actual money that he could even name a member of their central committee. Because he just happens to be encyclopedic about anything to do with any major, any even minor British left group of the past 30 years. They're not on the forefront of anything. Nobody's heard of them for the most part. They are tiny and they are largely ignored because every time they open their mouths, they say something fucking reactionary. So it's not the least bit surprising that she would just make the switch over to a much more fascist-adjacent group, much more openly, with, you know, the likes of fucking Prominent or at the forefront about the CVGBML. That's... I mean, it's like he's doing a bit here. It's a wind-up.
Furthermore, they have been on the forefront of opposing imperialism. Jyoti has traveled...
No, they haven't been on the forefront of that either. They're like... Surely being on the forefront means people would remember the last time they saw them at a protest. I've been to a lot of protests in Britain. A lot of fairly well-attended ones. Never seen these motherfuckers.
To Palestine, to stand with the Palestinian people.
Yeah, here's the thing, traveling is not actually the same thing as standing with people. Like, I traveled to Naples. That doesn't mean I stood with the Neapolitans in their fucking struggle against Matteo Salvini and the fucking Lega Nord fascist assholes. Yes, I support them in that struggle, but I didn't do anything like that when I was there. I drank and ate huge amounts of amazing pizza. I'd love to go there and, like, fucking work with them, because honestly what I've seen is they don't fuck around, and I like that. But I mean, traveling to a place does not actually equal solidarity. It's what you do when you're there. And the fact that it's all about whether they've traveled to a certain place tells me they didn't do much when they were there. The fact that I haven't heard of any of it, despite the fact that it would at the very least be a subject for some fucking satire, if they did do anything when they were there, tells me they probably didn't fucking do anything there.
Jyoti traveled to Libya to offer support to the people of Libya.
What the fuck kind of support could the 5 people in the CPGBML actually offer? Like, what we're talking about is a photo op. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's rhetorical support. And, yeah, I mean, that's not actually, I'm not gonna completely knock that. But it's just not that much. It really isn't that much, and it doesn't make you fucking heroic.
As they built socialism on the African continent in the face of sanctions and attacks from the United States. The Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, and Jyoti Brar beat the drum very loudly that socialism is an alternative to capitalism. And
ah, damn it.
is an alternative to capitalism, and that the banks, factories, and industries can be organized to serve public good and not profits.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's really good that we have one more organization that is pointing that out, but, like, the sheer number of groups that are beating the drums on that and often not actually doing much else on the subject, like the CPGB. Like, the one thing I've seen them occasionally, CPGBML, I mean, is they occasionally stand around with a branded banner. That's, like, it. Which, actually is not unlike Caleb's Workers' World Party. The branded merch is about as far as it goes. The whole idea is to make it look like they actually are bigger than they really are. And in the case of the CPGBML, they are so small they might as well not exist. Even the SWP, which is tiny at this point, barely... I mean, it was like about 700 active members before there was the mass exodus over Martin Smith and the whole rape cover-up. I mean, and then they lost like maybe half of the members, but possibly even more. Yeah, CPGBML is easily smaller than that. They are non-existent.
Is it possible that great revolutionary activists who do great, important, amazing work to oppose capitalism and imperialism,
and if she has done great, important, and amazing work on those subjects, you have kept it a secret from us? I mean, she's traveled some places. Look, I've traveled some places too. Unlike you and unlike Jodie Frashbar, I don't actually feel a particular need to tell people that, because it does not in itself. It doesn't mean that I actually did anything, and to me, if anyone is actually really doing anything heroic in the struggles that I've gotten to witness firsthand, it's the people who are actually doing it all the time, not the people who came to show up and kind of report on it later and tell people outside what's going on, which is the extent of what I've done. But I mean, so yeah, where's the amazing and heroic work? I mean, she traveled.
can also make mistakes? Yes, it is, but not according to Mr. Thought Slime. If you say one thing that he disagrees with, not about human rights, but rather about ideology.
Yeah, except it was about human rights, and about how her ideology opposes them, at least for trans people. And also, Thoughtslime didn't actually say that. What all Thoughtslime did was point out that she was a transphobe, and that Caleb did nothing to counter the blatantly transphobic shit she said on the platform he provided for her.
You're a Nazbol. That's
no. No. You're an asshole because you actually hang out with Alexander Dugin, the leader of the fucking Nazbol movement as it exists today. Now, and in fact, I noticed when I was looking for this video that, he stands Dugin fairly consistently. He is that thing, and God.
What he referred to me as, and not only are you wrong, but you deserve to be beaten up. That's basically what he's arguing here.
Well, this is very clever here, because he's actually attempting to create negative associations for people who actually put it on the line to fight against fascist paramilitaries that are terrorizing the streets of the United States. Isn't that interesting? I mean, isn't that totally what a fucking communist would do, in the spirit of solidarity amongst communists and anarchists and other people, would totally just attempt to create a negative association for the people who are doing that.
Here, he would have myself, someone who has been very outspoken in opposing all forms of oppression.
Well, yeah, no.
He would have Jyoti Brar, a prominent leader of communist activists and a woman of color in the United Kingdom.
Prominent leader? Jesus Christ, I mean, it's like...
attacked as Red Browns and Nazbols because...
Well, I mean, the fact that she actually accepts your platform does suggest that she's open to the whole red-brown thing. And the fact that she's now in the so-called Workers' Party, a nationalist socialist party for the English, yeah, that's there's a lot of shit on that red flag right there. That's pretty red and brown.
Because we apparently aren't on board with him, not about the human rights of transgender people, but about an ideological question of which he has a very specific view.
Namely that trans people have human rights.
Jyoti Brar, like myself, is a communist. However...
well, she's keeping that a fucking secret.
This understanding that I have that...
But then again, that he's keeping that a secret too. I mean, the thing is, either these terms mean something, or anyone can just fucking adopt them as some sort of, like, accessory. If being a communist means anything, he ain't it. And fucking CPGBML isn't either. Anyone who is willing to just throw entire marginalized sections of the working class under the bus, which is what he is in the process of doing in the most, like, sophisticatedly dishonest way possible, and very long-windedly at that, that's not communism, that's fucking scabbing. You're a goddamn scab.
That sometimes people can take very good progressive views on some issues while being
which we haven't actually seen Jyoti Barra do, and the organizations she's involved with would not make that likely.
problematic and very wrong on others doesn't simply apply to communists. I have been widely attacked because I will defend and uphold the role played by the black minister Louis Farrakhan.
Oh, he's going to stand another anti-Semite. Hey, by the way, I was just wondering. I'm always wondering this because not many people who I haven't heard of have actually found my channel. Where'd you find me? Like, how'd you do I know you from someplace else under a different name maybe, or did you just randomly find me? I'm just curious. But let me get back to fucking
Minister Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam is not a communist. And there are things that he has said about Jewish people and about the LGBT community that I vehemently disagree with.
Which would surprise you, given the things that he's saying right now. He's actually the things that Caleb Maupin says about Jewish people and about LGBT people, including in this fucking video, would not suggest a significant disagreement with Farrakhan.
The struggle of people around the world against U.S. imperialism. And I think that despite the problematic things that Minister Louis Farrakhan says and believes, he plays a very dynamic and important role.
One of the roles he plays, if you've watched the Scientology documentary on Netflix, you know something about this. But one of the big things that his organization has been doing in recent years is acting as a cutout for Scientology to be able to grift their way into the black community. They actually actively offered themselves as a way in, because somebody in the Scientology organization pointed out just how fucking, blindingly white they are. And so instead of just actually, trying to directly recruit within the black community, they came up with this idea of going via the Nation of Islam. And, apparently Farrakhan was totally okay with that, with allowing that kind of just utterly unscrupulous exploitation of the community he claims to be fighting for.
And let
being
me
a
add
direct party
that in
to
2011, when NATO bombs were falling and Libya faced a bombing and an
A small handful of rich ghouls owns most of the money, and we'll all die of starvation and exposure if we don't get some of it, even though we're producing more than we need and throwing it. And the only way that you can get the means of your survival is by throwing yourself into perpetual and worsening exploitation forever? Need to worry about making a living and surviving the forthcoming end of the world, while the aforementioned handful of rich ghouls don't.
So according to Mr. Thought Slime, the problem with capitalism isn't that in...
this has already been done. I mean, the short version is he's going to suddenly, randomly, based on absolutely fucking nothing, start talking about Malthusianism again. He loves to accuse other people of Malthusianism.
Predictions of an ecological disaster unless the human race stops consuming and we reduce the human population. Those are racist Malthusian propaganda points that have nothing to do with Marxism.
And have absolutely nothing to do with anything that Thought Slam actually said. But his video on that is too good. I'm not going to rehash that. I'm looking for the other stuff that he didn't cover. Really.
Rational, inefficient mode of fossil fuel-based economy still exists. We need to get out of petroleum and natural gas as the basis for running our global economy. We need higher forms of energy,
that's great.
Perhaps fusion. We need to...
It's interesting. He keeps coming back. This is the second time I've seen him standing fusion. Fusion is nowhere near actually happening. Oh God, don't worry about it. Your spelling it looks fine to me, and everybody types slow from my standpoint because I type ridiculously fast. So you found non-competes chat and the search. Okay, very cool. Because, I was kind of hoping that, people might see me if I was in there occasionally and said useful and interesting and occasionally entertaining things. Yeah, so it's kind of cool to see that somebody found me that way. Yeah, I suppose you've actually heard my typing on the, on the stream. I see. The funny thing is, when I'm typing, I don't really hear it, but I actually heard it when I was playing back my stream from last night today, and yeah, it's pretty fucking fast.
Expand the space program. We need a more efficient way of raising people out of poverty and producing the energy needed for life, and that if we don't do it soon, there will be some ecological problems. But
some ecological problems. The IPCC says that we can get down to net zero CO2 emissions by 2030, or we will face irreversible consequences that would imperil the survival of humanity within the medium term. I mean, this isn't just some problems. Some problems are what we got now, where fucking California is on fire half the fucking year, and Oregon and Washington State and parts of Alberta and BC. That's ecological problems. When it's fucking snowing in May and shit, and there's a drought all over the western U.S. and almost all of Mexico. Yeah, that's ecological problems. That's what we've got now. If we don't get down to zero net emissions by 2030, fun fact, none of the U.S. Democrats even proposed to do the bare minimum the IPCC said was absolutely, desperately needed. And, of course, Joe Biden had to be shamed into even offering to a slightly less insulting rejection of what the IPCC says is necessary to maintain the fucking habitability of the only fucking planet we've got. So, yeah, some ecological problems, that's right, Caleb, go on.
The issue at hand is not that human beings are consuming too much, it's rather that the economy is organized in an irrational way.
Which is like literally what ThoughtSlime said.
Because it's owned by private capitalists who exploit workers to make profits.
This is literally what ThoughtSlime actually said.
And in their naked pursuit of profits, they're endangering the environment and threatening human progress.
Threatening human survival, but yes, this is like literally what fucking ThoughtSlime said in the thing that you quoted.
But watching this video forces me to ask some more questions about Mr. ThoughtSlime, his beliefs, and his...
Oh, you look at that, like, that grin that's starting to get out, to pull its way onto his lips. This is where he thinks he's actually gonna have the gotcha moment.
His motivations. Take a look at this part.
Me and a black dude might be equally exploited working at a Burger King together. Say you're working at Burger King. Your coworker comes to you because they know you're a big-time lefto, big-time workers' rights kind of person, and they're like, hey, I think I might be trans, and I want to start to transition, but I'm really afraid that if I do, I'll lose my job.
Burger King.
God, yeah. I've seen this clip so many times, but it's actually somehow funnier when you actually see the lead up, this whole fucking boring shtick that he does to get here.
Now, I really doubt that Mr. ThoughtSlime has ever worked in fast food. However, I did work in fast food when I was a college student. One summer, during my college years, I actually worked at a sandwich shop.
Well, did the sandwich shop's lawyers require him not to disclose the name, or does he just not want anyone to go looking and find out that nobody remembers him working there?
It was fast food in the Cleveland area near the college I went to. And I'll tell you, that was a miserable job. I mean, they were constantly driving you faster to make those sandwiches and...
It must have been nice not to have to work that job for more than a fucking
turn
summer.
Out those orders. It was very, very difficult to keep up the pace. And I'll tell you one thing. The last thing that I ever did when I was working, assembling hamburgers and running the fryer at a fast food place, was to talk to my coworkers about their gender identity.
Yeah, because it's very clear that you wouldn't have any respect for anyone who wanted to talk about that.
We weren't sitting there and having group therapy and talking about discrimination or how we felt about our gender identities. We were being driven to work harder and harder and harder.
And also, here's the thing. you're trying to organize in a workplace. Yes, that involves finding time on the clock, off the clock, whenever, to bring up subjects that aren't necessarily the things your boss wants you to talk about, because your boss would actually kind of like you to shut the fuck up. I mean, now I should be clear, I haven't actually done workplace organizing, but I know people who have it, and I've studied how to do it. I've just never been in a position where I felt like I was actually felt like I'd be safe to do it. Most of the time, the workplace is too small, and people just were too much involved in their own shit, or in one, I was too busy having mind games played on me by my horrible and incompetent supervisor, and getting absolutely no support from anybody. So I haven't done it, but I know about it, and anyone who knows anything basic about it knows a big part of it is you're having conversations, finding ways to have those conversations on the clock and adjacent to the clock about shit your boss doesn't want you to talk about, and sometimes that's going to include, necessarily, it's going to include it talking about discrimination. So yeah, okay, so you weren't a workplace organizer, Caleb, and nobody really felt safe talking about their personal shit with you because you just look like an asshole who will just lecture people in an ignorant but long-winded way.
So he seems a little bit out of touch when he's giving us a lecture about transgender people at Burger King.
I mean, but out of touch. That's cute. You see, given that Thought Slime actually worked most of his adult life in jobs like the one that Caleb Maupin did for a couple of months when he was a student.
But let's give the actual Marxist approach to the issue of anti-transgender bigotry that one might experience among one's co-workers at a fast food restaurant. The Marxist answer has always been solidarity.
This is literally what Thought Slime said. Fuck's sake.
But there are many workers in the United States right now, not just at fast food restaurants, but at all kinds of places, call centers, coffee shops, the tech industry, automakers, who have been
he's just listing fucking industries
taken in by the far-right ideology.
Yes, which you're helping to sell.
They have been told that their problems are caused by immigrants. Their problems are caused by black and brown people.
Their problems are caused by transgender ideology.
Their problems are caused by the lack of a police state and the government being too soft on crime and not locking up enough people. A lot of working class people have been led to believe that the reason that the next generation of workers are stuck in a cycle of low-wage, short-term service sector jobs, like fast food, is because of some kind of liberal cultural Marxist conspiracy.
Yeah, like the sort of thing your mate Dugan likes to talk about. But here's the thing, it's kind of interesting. Whenever I see people like trying to connect far-right ideology to broke white people, when everything we've seen, particularly recently in the past few years, it's not been the broke ones who are into this stuff. I mean, Trump's voters weren't broke. They actually, on their average income, was double the national median. They were very decidedly better off than the local communities who came out to defend themselves against them. But for some reason, it's very convenient for rich boys like Caleb Maupin, whose dad is some sort of globe-trotting banker asshole who could take his son along on business trips to Ecuador, to make the issue of the far right, which is extremely well funded by the ruling class. I mean, you look at how much travel these Nazis do in order to make up the numbers at their pathetic little rallies, which have zero local participation for the most part, is coming from the upper income brackets. There's a huge amount of money being pumped into that shit, and actually Caleb's kind of a part of that.
Well, the job of the Marxist is to show the real reason why workers at Burger King are so underpaid and hard-worked, why the United States is declining, why living standards are going down overall, and why there is such a rise in poverty and suffering in the Western countries. Their job is to show that this is because of the billionaire banker ruling class.
Which you were defending in our last video. I mean, was that a recent change of mind, or... I guess
And it's a problem. You take a variety of factors and reduce it down to simply class.
According to Mr. Thought Slime.
And it's a problem. You take a variety of factors and reduce it down to simply class. And sometimes you gotta do that. Sometimes it's a useful shorthand. But it may have the unintended, or in some cases, very much intended, side effect of erasing or making apologetics for someone else's oppression.
See, according to this pseudo-leftist milieu, if you...
I like how he's and now Thought Slime is a milieu. He's one person. Like, I mean, this is like, yesterday we found out that the synthetic left was one single entity, of which he could only name actually one person who a lot of the synthetic left doesn't even actually fucking like.
You talk about working people, if you talk about class struggle, if you rant against the billionaires and bankers and monopolists that rule the world, you're a fascist. According to them,
where the hell does he even come up with this?
Working class is a fascist buzzword.
Citation needed.
According to them, working families is somehow a discriminatory phrase.
No, it's just a fucking wishy-washy bullshit term that Democrats have thrown out there in order to avoid talking about the working class, because their whole propaganda approach is that there is no such thing as a working class, because we're all middle class. I mean, but of course he likes the words working families. He has this wonderful phrase, he's very proud of it, where he goes like, we need a government of action to fight for working families. And it's like, and he thinks that this is like some sort of fucking rallying cry that doesn't sound absolutely like just bullshit. Like, I mean, what the fuck's a government of action? But, yeah, I mean, you do you.
Any appeal to people on the basis of advancing their living conditions and building a better life, doing that...
Oh, I mean, okay. He reminds you of church. Okay, this is interesting to me. I'm Jewish, so church is something I've seen in the movies, and, well, I've seen the fucking buildings, okay? So... I'm very interested in, tell me more about that. I'm actually very curious about that. Although, you know, it just kind of reminds me when you say that of, at one point it felt like his whole, like, weird, distorted version of Marxism was very much like the prosperity gospel. Oh, I've been very fun in chat. Thank you. Thank you for saying so. I'm trying. You know, this is having people to play off of really helps. I need to see reactions, and then that actually helps me focus my mind. That's actually kind of why I like reaction videos, because even if I haven't got anyone there, so yeah. I want to hear about this church thing, and I have this on full screen here, so I'm not going to see it directly, but I'll be checking back in a minute.
Is unacceptable in their worldview. For them, socialism is not about working people casting off their bigoted ideas, standing arm in arm, fighting back against the billionaires and bosses, seizing control of the means of production.
Weird, because, you know, I've been in this synthetic left blob milieu, whatever, for a pretty long time now. And I was always under the impression that we thought that that's what it was about. That, you know, bigoted ideas like this cowardly bullshitting about transgender ideology. That casting all that shit off was kind of the idea. But no, go ahead.
And reorganizing society so that growth is unlimited and all poverty can be eradicated. Oh.
Growth is unlimited. Okay, here's the thing. The idea of growth being that is a capitalist thing. the idea that that growth is an end in itself. That is one of the very specific characteristics of capitalism. That's not something that is inherently a good thing, but to the extent that he actually has even read any Marx or any theory at all, he has not apparently comprehended it, so he just thinks that more and more stuff. It's funny because if you watch the Surfs and Thought Slime did this thing. I've watched it several times because it's just so fucking funny. The Weed Lord's got his own show, and he did what passes for a deep dive into Marx. And his version of, he's like, at one point, because it was funny, because he was like looking like he actually was finding out all the stuff they were talking about kind of for the first time while reading the Encyclopedia Britannica. And at one point he goes, now that we can 3D print molecules and do artificial photosynthesis, and really there is infinite commodities, we could actually maybe, communism might start to make sense then. And that's literally the fucking argument this dickhead's making. He's making Weed Lord's argument, except Weed Lord sounds a lot nicer when he does it. And they're both completely full of shit.
For them, socialism is about the individuality of artists and middle-class intellectuals, and them standing up against the mob of inferior rabble who don't go to NYU to learn about these abstract gender theories.
And see, and this is another one of those, like, fucking dog whistles. This idea that any language that has come out of the struggle against transphobia, against racism, against homophobia, against all of that, and that has eventually, in many cases, been co-opted by academia, is in itself academic, when in fact it's actually generally the other way around. And the idea is specifically in order to make people who don't have a whole lot of education, people who don't have the kind of expensive, don't come from the kind of money Caleb Maupin comes from, and therefore can't just go off and get that kind of education, to make them feel intimidated by all of it, rather than just recognizing it as stuff that came out of people's lives. Unlike this bullshit about transgender ideology. I had some experience at a middle school at an evangelical church for about 2 years. It was weird. Everything I've seen about the way these evangelical organizations are arranged creeps me right the fuck out. I've looked at some of these, evangelical pseudo-universities, and the level of control and surveillance that's involved, it's like, you would actually be less thoroughly monitored in fucking North Korea in some cases. And yet, of course, they had the ability, with a straight face, they could just say anything. Yeah, make you feel dumb and small. Yeah, I really think that's his game. That's what guys like this, apparently, his dad's some rich banker fucker, and that's what guys from that class, one of the things that they really learn how to do. They put on a suit, and they can, talk down to you, and they do it in a way that has an authoritative tone, and if you don't really feel totally on point yourself, if you aren't totally confident in your own knowledge and your own experience, they just totally bulldoze you, and you think, okay, he's saying it so confidently and authoritatively, maybe there's something to it. Yeah, they're not even accredited because they don't teach science, and you have to teach science to get accreditation. And also, they massively abuse their students, and some of them are explicitly, or until very recently, were explicitly segregated racially.
That you must immediately agree with, or else you're the equivalent of Adolf Hitler. I think the best way to understand the difference between this individual and myself is simply to look at the name that he gave himself, Thought Slime, and the image in the background of his video. Mr. Thought Slime has this image of slime, green, gross slime, coming out of a sewer behind him the whole time he is speaking. I don't find that appealing.
Yeah, I mean, you have staff to clean those things up. I understand.
I don't enjoy looking at gross, mucus-like looking slime.
That doesn't look like mucus, though. It looks like Mountain Dew.
And I'm not particularly interested in hearing what someone says if they name themselves after something that I don't particularly like looking at.
Well, I'm not particularly interested in people who decide to set up their set design to simulate an airplane toilet.
But you see...
But I'm watching
from
you...
the working class. I grew up in a small town with people who worked in factories.
Yeah, he grew up with people who worked in factories. His dad was a fucking globetrotting, one of those so-called international bankers he likes to talk about. Yeah, his dad was a banker and apparently was traveling around to Latin America fairly regularly, where the U.S. actually exploits the shit out of the place. Yeah, so notice he says he was in a place with factory workers. This is what fucking Bill O'Reilly did too.
Working people are trying to get rid of slime. They're trying to get rid of dirt.
Which is interesting because this sort of neat freak sort of thing is very much a fascist thing, that sort of purity and neatness and all that shit. I mean...
They don't like the fact that, the infrastructure of the United States is falling apart.
Well, yes, and you see, because Dot Slime has an image of some sort of green slime in his background, that means he loves that the infrastructure is fucked up. That means he absolutely loves that the infrastructure is fucked up. Incidentally, I don't think this is so much a picture of crumbling infrastructure as the aftermath of a tornado. Maybe a hurricane, but given that the houses are actually still there. But yeah.
That our roads and bridges are in decay.
Yeah, which, I mean, anyone who's watched Thought Slime knows he's very big on fuck our roads and bridges. I mean, that's his thing. He has a whole bit he does where, Bobby Duke comes out and explains why we gotta just fuck up the roads and bridges and fuck up the infrastructure. Or something.
That our water is being contaminated with lead. That opioids.
Yes, Thought Slime loves contaminated water. I mean, that's another one of the things he loves to talk about.
Drugs are taking the lives of working people in big numbers. That there's hopelessness and despair among working people.
Seriously. I mean, where the hell is he even going with this at this point?
So much poverty.
Yeah, the music is the song of King of the Soul.
Working people want to get to a better life. They want things to be nicer. They want things to be more hopeful, more secure.
Yeah, and you think this is a point of... This is like in the other one, he was like, oh, well, these people are against wealth in the abstract. And it's like, what the... It's not even fucking weird. Against the concept of stuff that is of use.
More stable, and yes, more clean. But middle-class intellectuals have another view.
Well, yes, and thankfully we have Caleb to tell us the middle-class intellectual view.
They think that dirty things, abstract, expressionist art is edgy and exciting.
Oh, yeah, see, the picture that you see, there are people in the mud. Those are obviously middle-class intellectuals. This is like
that
more off the hook.
Difference. Folks, there's a reason that the CIA, at the same time, was covertly funding Trotskyites and anti-communist leftists with its Congress for Cultural Freedom program, also covertly funded the work of Jackson Pollock.
Actually, that's not quite right. Because the Congress for Cultural Freedom was how the abstract expressionists were getting subsidized indirectly.
Tried to marginalize the school of art known as social realism. Because middle-class intellectuals, elements in the U.S. government that funded them and support them, deep down realize that the danger isn't from people exploring Marxism as an abstract idea. The danger to our society isn't from people debating the concept of gender and what it really means.
then, yeah, debated the concept of Jimmy. Fuck you, Caleb. Seriously.
The danger is solidarity.
Which, I mean, well, there's no danger of solidarity amongst people who actually take your shit seriously with a transgender ideology.
Danger is populism. The danger is...
No, populism is how you prevent the danger.
Is working people coming together, putting aside racism, sexism, and all bigoted ideas and...
Interesting he leaves out transphobia given the subject.
All forms of oppression, standing arm in arm and fighting back. If you look all over the world, so many countries have broken free from capitalism. And when they've done it, they haven't tried to make their countries more slimy.
Like, seriously, does he actually think that the fucking tongue-in-cheek graphic background on Thought Slime is his project for society?
And gross. They haven't put up paintings of abstract art and...
Actually, yeah, Caleb, you're gonna need to Google Eastern Bloc movie posters. Like, I remember this was going around as like as a series of images, as an album on Facebook a few years ago. But they showed the movie posters that in various Soviet bloc countries were actually used for Hollywood movies and UK movies that they ended up importing and having domestic releases. And that shit is abstract. It is fucking surreal. It's a real fucking trip. Like, look up Czechoslovakia Ghostbusters movie poster. Maybe if you do that...
Jackson...
Or, well, I can give you... I'm gonna write it. This is the Czech name for it. If you look for the movie poster of that, Krotitele Duhu, you'll see, actually, they're kind of, they were kind of big on the abstract, on the sort of weird, surreal stuff. In fact, a lot of their architecture was very abstract.
Instead, they
and
have
surreal
built
and
some of the most beautiful cities, some of the most beautiful subway systems, the most beautiful gardens that you've ever seen. Working people are trying to get out of the slime. We're trying to get out of the cycle of destruction that capitalism has created.
Whereas, yes, of course, Thought Slime, his entire project for society is, like, to cover us up in slime, like, at the end of Ghostbusters 2.
But Mr. Thought Slime, he's from a different school of thought. He has an ideology that's about destruction. For him, being a leftist is about tearing things down. It's about accusing people of being racist, sexist, homophobic, and shaming them.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is like the exact same line that you'll hear on fucking Ben Shapiro and Tim Pool. And here it is, I mean...
It's about shaming people for having privilege. It's about destruction. It's about chaos in the streets. It's about creating instability in society. And it's about...
here's the thing. Instability is kind of necessary if you're going to have an actual revolution. If the existing regime remains stable, that means it's not going anywhere. Revolution inherently means destabilizing things. Like, I mean, the fucking... Do you think there was a lot of stability in society during the Russian Revolution? One of the few revolutions you seem to actually like?
Destabilizing countries that break out of Western capitalism and staging color revolutions in places like Libya and Syria and Eastern Europe to overthrow socialist governments because they're not in line with his enlightened Western ideological views.
Holy shit, Thought Slime, I did not know that you were doing that. I had no idea that you were the one fucking destabilizing. Is that, okay, if we zoom out of this picture, we'll see Thought Slime taking down that statue of Lenin, wherever the hell that is.
That's his view. But for the rest of us, socialism is about building a whole new world. It's about the people coming first and not profits. It's about humanity coming together.
It's about defending the billionaires.
It's about reorganizing the economy to serve public good.
Well, not harming the billionaires because that's anti-Marxist.
And not profits. It's about a whole new way of doing things where...
except, as long as it doesn't harm the people at the very top of the ruling class.
Countries don't trade with each other at the expense of one another, but rather there's win-win cooperation, where countries become wealthier by trading with each other, and we no longer have a predatory system where big international bankers beat
Yes, that euphemism.
down developing countries. That's what socialism has really always been about.
Yeah, how the fuck would
And
you
in the
know?
countries that have built socialism, whether it be the Soviet Union, whether it be China, whether it be Cuba, Venezuela, the Ba'athist Arab socialist countries of the Middle East, other countries around the world, that's what socialism has been about.
Yeah, this is kind of getting away from the bit where you were trying to explain why being transphobic is totally okay as long as you do it in a cleverly dishonest
It's been
way.
about making the world cleaner and nicer and more stable, bringing people together, eradicating the divisions that drive people against each other. That's what socialism is about.
Well, yes, and what was your contribution here, apart from standing one transphobe and one anti-Semite?
Real socialism is optimistic. But what
Well, I am optimistic. I'm very optimistic every time I look at his view figures, and they're not actually very high.
Mr. Thought Slime is preaching. A pessimistic view that the world is all going to hell, that we're all using too many resources and need to be poorer, that working people are inferior rabble because they don't understand his ideology.
See, it would be really fascinating to actually see some video where he says any of these things, but he hasn't clipped it. So what we know from this is that Caleb Maupin can read thoughts. He can read all of our thoughts. He knows that Thought Slime secretly thinks all these things that he's never actually said. But he doesn't want to say that because people might start to think ill of him. He can't admit how he knows about Thought Slime's secret thoughts.
That every progressive fighter and leftist who may have a backward view on one question or other deserves to be beaten up and attacked violently. That worldview is a destructive worldview.
It's interesting because you'd think that the worldview that it's kind of okay to be a reactionary, bigoted fuck if you're supposedly kind of acceptable on other shit. That's kind of a destructive view, and it doesn't bring people together because it actually excludes all the people who are targeted by the reactionary, bigoted views that guys like him are so quick to defend.
And it's not a socialist worldview. And it's not surprising that some of the most powerful institutions in the United States have done a lot to promote such a destructive and pessimistic outlook.
Okay, that was... I don't know. I mean, it looks like some people do. But it's clearly not that many of them. And I'm actually glad. I mean, because Jesus Christ. I mean, well, the thing is, he's unwatchable, and he's constantly complaining about the fact that nobody watches him. But okay, it's after 2:00, and I think I'm going to wrap it up and deparch my throat. Thank you very much for joining me. Once again, I always am glad to see people watching, and I think it's actually cool that it's somebody who, I didn't actually tag in a fucking Facebook post who showed up to see me. I think that's lovely. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed your company in chat, and I'll see you next week. And I'll be clipping these highlights over the course of the week, if there's anything particularly good. So you'll find stuff on the channel. I guess fuck Facebook, fuck Twitter too, honestly. But I mean, they also are kind of monopolies at this point. But have a good night.